Dr. Smita Patil. I'm with the School of Gender and Development Studies. Today I'm going to discuss this topic, political conflict and insurgency, which is part of the course BGS 012. As you know, conflict is an integral aspect of the political life. Political conflicts pose challenges or threat in various degrees, not just in the life and humanity, but also in a political order and democratic institution. They can come in different shapes and forms and last for the longer or shorter periods of the time. Why they all share, however, is a conceptual disagreement on the principal values or agreements. At the same time, political conflict is a basic features of the representative democracy. Since independence, India has also experienced several political conflicts and insurgencies of various ways in many parts of the country. The main reason is that why political conflicts and insurgencies have existed are increasing sense of ethnic and religious identities, aggressive measures of principal states with the Indian Union's identified sense of the neglect and alienation and unacceptable underdevelopment. These have impacted millions of people and resulted in significant lost opportunity in terms of economic growth and social development. All the conflict and insurgencies could assume a variety of forms. All types of political conflicts and resultant insurgencies involve important private, social and economic costs. They invariably results in a loss of trust between economic agents and resources. So therefore, in this lecture, we will put an effort, in fact, to understand the theories of the political conflict and insurgency, and the effort is to learn on the impact of the political conflict and insurgency and the major political conflicts and insurgency in India. And we also try to understand the meaning of the political conflict and insurgencies and theories, of course, and know the major political conflicts and insurgencies in India and the impact of these in Indian society as well. So political conflict and insurgency, what does it mean? Political conflicts involve effort or mutually opposed parties to obtain scarce resources at each other's expense through destroying, injuries, throwing or otherwise controlling over parties. And it is defined as a contention among collective actors over the structure, incumbents, or the policies of the political regime, and it is it is in a way a regime features of the political life. It is also said to exist when two or more groups engage in the struggle over values and claims to the status, power and resources, in which the aim of the opponents are to neutralize, injure or eliminate the rivals. Conflict is a demonstration of the cross purposes of the distant or similar political groups, when often ends in political violence. Now, for instance, if you look at the Heidelberg Institute for the International Conflict Research, it defines political conflict as a positional difference between at least two assertive and directly involved actors regarding the values to a society. The conflict items could include territory, secession, autonomy system, ideology, regional predominance, national power, resources, and so on, which is carried out using the observable and interrelated conflict measures that lie outside the established regulatory procedures and threaten core state functionaries or hold the prospect of doing so. Thus, the core of the political conflict lies in the disagreement or contradiction represented by the notion of the positional difference. A positional difference is supposed incompatibility of the ideas and the belief. It assumes the occurrence of the following three elements. There must be at least two entities possessing intellectual capacity in the region and who can communicate. Such entities called an actor. For the actor to sense the incompatibility between their ideas and belief, there must be reciprocal action and acts of communication between the said actors. These action and acts of the communication are called measures. A communicating act always refers to the specific issue, and action always refers to a certain object. The subject behind a measure is called item. For instance, that Ted Robert Gore points in his work that there is no exact distinction in the social science generally or in conflict research specifically between the political and the non-political forms of conflict. Yet, there does exist certain distinguishes characters which enables one to differentiate between social conflict and political conflict. The main components of the society are the individual, the organization, the institutions, and the structure. In any society, the conflict will arise as an individual or a group having their goals interact with one another. Many of these conflicts do not become political, for some of them may be either unimportant or tend to fade away, or they can solve through non-political channels, but only these conflicts which enter the political process are the ones that acquire the form of the political conflict. Now, let us also understand the concept and the meaning of insurgency. Insurgency, on the other hand, is a protracted political military struggle directed towards subverting or disciplining the legitimacy of the constitutional government, or occupying a power and completely or partially controlling the resources of the territory through the use of irregular military forces and illegal political organizations. Often a byproduct or manifestation of the political conflict, Encyclopedia Britannia defines it as a term historically restricted to the rebellious acts that did not reach the proportions of an organized revolution. It has subsequently been applied to any such armed uprising, typically, in a guerrilla characters against the recognized government of the state or the country. The common denomination for most insurgent groups is their objective of the gaining control of the population or a territory, including its resources. And therefore, this objective differentiate insurgent groups from purely terrorist organization. It is worth nothing that identifying a movement or an insurgency does not convey a normative judgment or a legitimacy of the movement, or it causes the term insurgency is simply a description of the nature of the conflict. Now, there are different theories of the political conflict. Theories of the conflict are explanation put forward to the explain cause of the conflict. The cause of the conflict are numerous and complex, thus creating problem of analyzing or analysis of the specific conflict situation. The theories are advanced to simplify the cause by looking at them in the categories. The nature, cause, the impact of the conflicts have been extensively written on by the scholar, depending on the school of thought to which they represent. Such explanations have tended to place a lot of emphasis on one particular or a set of related theories, while diminishing the importance or explanatory relevance of the other competing theories, the condition under which conflicts occur, and sometimes the condition for their resolution. Described below are some of the major theories explaining cause of the conflict. Now, structural theory of the conflict. This theory has two main sub-orientation. The first is a radical structural theory represented by the Marxist dialectical school with exponents like Marx, Engels, Lenin, etc. The second is a liberal structuralism, represented by Rawls and John Galton on the structural violence. Structuralism sees incompatible interests based on the competition for the resources, which is the most cause are assumed to be scarce, as being responsible for social conflict. The solution to these types of conflict to the Marxist is that the contradiction will lead to the revolution, civil war, or some form of violence leading to the overthrow of the explanation system. Liberal structuralism called for the elimination of the structural defense with the policy reforms. The structural theory attempts to explain conflict as a product of tension that arises when the group compete for scarce resources. The central argument in this theory is that the conflict is built into a peculiar ways societies are structured or organized. It describes the condition of the society and how such condition or the environment can create conflict. Structure conflict theory identifies such condition as a social exclusion, deprivation, class inequalities, injustice of the political marginalization, gender imbalance, racial segregation, economic exploitation, and the likes. All of these often lead to the conflict. Now, Marxist theory of the conflict is an offshoot of the Marxian explanation of the society. Society is divided into unequal classes. The one is a strong, rich, and noble and bears a tag of the bourgeois who controls the instrumentality of the state, while the other is deprived, socially deflected, financially influenced, and called the proletariat. There is a constant struggle between the two, but that has the financial muscle controls both the state and the poor, that is structure of the society. Thus, the Marxist stand is that the state is itself a product of the class antagonism. The state is therefore a structure to be a perpetual state of the conflict and use of the conflict. The rich controls the state as well as the means of the production. The rich thus grows at the expenses of the poor who lives at his mercy or her mercy and is implicitly abetted by the development. The central argument of the Marxism is thus that capitalism is at the heart of the state and that same capitalism is exploitative and oppressive, has been responsible for the polarization of the society and the state and into two incompatible classes. The limitation of the Marxism is similar to that of the structuralism. It looked at every issue of the conflict from the viewpoint of the dialectical materialism alone. This economic prism is not even enough to capture every aspect of the conflict causation. One more theory which we need to study is the economic theory of the conflict. Economists largely assume people in the conflict to be fighting over not about something that is material. The question then becomes, is the conflict a result of the greed or of the grievances? Some people commonly refer to the conflict enterprise benefit from the chaos, while overwhelming majority of the population is affected by the negative impact of the conflict. While the prospect of the penury gains is seldom the principal incentive for the rebellion, it can become, for some insurgent group, a preferred state of affairs. Economic theory of conflicts explicit the economic undercurrents in conflict causation. There is considerable interface between politics, like for instance power, resources or value, and the scarcity. People seek power because it is a means to an end, more often economic ends. Communities fought over farmlands, grazing fields, water resources. Group fight government over allocation of the resources or the revenue. Scarcity, wants, needs, or the fear of the scarcity is often driving force of the political power, contention for the resources control, and so forth. So and so forth. So conflict is thus not far-fetched in the course of such palpable fear of the threat of the scarcity, just as a fear of the poverty and deprivation could lead to the fraud or the corruption, so is threat of a real famine, deprivation, mismanagement of scarce resources could could be one of the ways to deal with the conflict over the control. The realistic theory of the conflict is one of the theory in which that the political realism explains conflict as an inherent attribute of the men. As far as one lives with this baggage of the emotion, human beings, in fact, so will conflict remain a part of their habitat as long as human beings remains as a political animal with interests which differ from others. So shall conflict of the interests remain a feature of the society. More importantly, as long as there are scarce resources where most men, women, or in general human beings, one would say, ambiguously seeking comfort or a control of the resources, conflict is inevitable. Thus, realism is a good blend of the Marxism and economic theories in the explanation of the conflict. The realistic theory described conflict as a product of innate selfish nature of the human beings who continues to pursue, their own best interest, even if, at the cost of the others. So this selfish nature of human being leads to the competitive processes between actors who seek to have all or most, available scarce resources. It is such attribute that is taken to the interstate level, which leads to the, a certain kind of behavior, hegemonic propensity, imperialism, and so on and so forth can be a resistance, and then you would see that the violent opposition and constantly heat up debate even in the system. One more theory which we need to also understand is psycho-cultural theory of the conflict. The role of the culturally inducted conflict is emphasized by this theory. It contains, therefore, that even though there are different forms of identities, the one that is based on people's ethnic origin and the culture that is learned on the basis of that ethnic origin is one of the most important ways of explaining violent conflict. Identity is thus seen to be the reason for social conflicts that take long to resolve, despite the belief that ethnicity is the biggest source of identity-based conflict. This school of thought agrees that this does not mean that conflict is unavoidable. Whatever may be, there are ethnic differences. Now, frustration, anger, aggression theory of the conflict is one of the part in which that the psychoanalytical hypothesis of the conflict and the theories that is natural to human being to react to unpleasant situation. The hypothesis is drawn from, frustration, aggression theory propounded by Dollard and Dollard and Doob, and further developed by Miller and Brekonzik. The theory says that the aggression is the result of blocking or the frustration of the person's effort to attain the goal, and the frustration is described as the feeling we get when we do not get what we want and or something interferes with our gaining or desired goal as shown. And in the case of, like, for instance, that if you look at in the contemporary world, you would see that the conflict which is there, I mean the Syria war, the Palestine issues, the Horns in Rwanda, Niger Delta region, you would see there is a conflict constantly going on, and the ways in which anger implies feelings and responses and the frustration, injuries, how these debates are going around. So one would see that the frustration aggression theory states that the aggression is caused by the frustration. When someone is prevented for reaching the target, and that becomes, that is the issue of the frustration. So these kind of frustration can turn into anger and then aggression when something triggers. When explanation fails to meet attainment, the tendency is for the people to confront others they can hold responsible for frustrating their ambition or someone on whom they can take out their frustration. When aggression cannot be expressed against the real source of frustration, displaced hostilities can be targeted to substitute objective, that is, aggression is transferred to alternate objectives. And there is, however, similarities among the various conflict theories, which is the various theories one may agree or disagree. One of such areas in which that one would recommend recommended approaches is that to recognize the needs and interests of the both sides, hence strategies that are non-conflictual and those that remove the feeling of the bitterness in the process of settling dispute between individual groups or nation. At the same time, each of them adds, perspective to the pool of the available knowledge or the conflict resolution process. Although they are analytically distinct or static points of departure, there is enough overlap among them. One can combine one or more points of view in the process of analyzing conflict or helping political leaders to develop the right policies for dealing with them. And one has to also see that the impact of the violent political conflict and insurgency in the in the life of human beings. So one would see that the political conflict and insurgency do affect the people and result in the significant lost opportunity in terms of economic growth, social development, and you would see that how the various theories have been described to it. One of the ways to look at this is the gender implications to it, the impact of the insurgency on the gender, women, men, children. They do face major problem in the insurgency, and you could see in fact the ways in which the sexual gender-based violence which triggered in the conflict, post-conflict settlings. And if you want to read more particularly, you can go and log in the United Nations documents. Also, it impacts on health, economic cost. In addition to, in the context of the political conflict, you would see that in the insurgencies area, for instance, the political conflict and the insurgency issues in the post-independent India, one would see that how the Maoist or the Nakshal movements emerge from West Bengal and the other parts of India, and how it has sort of impacted the life of the people. You could also understand in the the issues of Punjab insurgency, which had happened in 60s onwards, the Green Revolution taken shape 70s, 90s, and you would see that this kind of violence, in fact, I mean, it has a linkages from Green Revolution till uh, the next years, how it has sort of engaged with that the Punjab insurgency issue. And you would see that this kind of violence, it has impacted thousands of lives, and the people, the human suffering, approximately, if you look at the figure, I mean, it has impacted a large number of people drastically in 1917 onwards. At the same time, if we look at in the Northeast again, which has again been a conflicting area, which is a border area to the Indian nation, and these are the states, in fact, the Naga conflict, which again been ethnicity, which is very rich in terms of northeast of India, the Naga communities, how those hundreds of tribes in fact going through this. So this community lives across the Naga hills, and one would see that in terms of the territory, Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, with the Naga Hills area of the Myanmar. So you would sort of understand the Naga Hills, and also there is a whole historical contextualization. For instance, the Naga Hills become a part of the British India in 1881, and you would see that the whole debate on annexion of the Assam in 1827, which again leads to the unification of the Naga tribe to form a Naga club in 1918. And one has to also understand the Naga National Council, which established in 1949, and then the demand for the freedom from the foreign rule. I mean, if you are really interested, you can in fact go and check. There are very interesting books which are available, and the ways in which that the insurgency, because not only this part, but there are other parts of India which you can notice that the conflict and insurgency are the serious issue which is impacting in the everyday life, or particularly in context of the gender. Thank you.